At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shemaiah Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shemaiah Reed.
Today on I Am Refocused Radio, we are here once again. We have another amazing show lined up for y'all today. And we're going to have a true honor talking to David Gregory. He is a New York Times best-selling author of Dinner with a Perfect Stranger, The Last Christian, and over 10 powerful books that dare to ask the deeper questions. His work has reached millions, sparked global conversation, and has even hit the big screen. But this guy is not that hard to catch. He took some time to clear his calendar today, and we're not just talking about his amazing writing process with his stories, but also going to be talking about some of the hard truths that a lot of us try to avoid. So without further ado, I want to welcome to the show today our guest. How you doing, David, man?
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
I appreciate you clearing your calendar just to be on the show today. I know you have a lot of great resources. You're packed with probably 10 more minutes full of intel in your bio. But when it comes to your background in broadcasting and also Dallas seminary degree and countless of long parts of your resume, kind of give us a snapshot of who is David and how did you get to this position?
Well, I started my writing career a bit late. I actually graduated with a business degree from the University of Houston and was in business for, a decade and a half or so. And I kind of just wanted to do something that I personally found a little more meaningful and directly involved in influencing people's lives. And so I went back to school and went to Dallas Seminary and got a degree from Dallas Seminary. And while I was there, I took a writing class, a creative writing class, and we had to do some fiction writing. I actually had been, I had just self-published a nonfiction book that I co-authored. It was the primary material of somebody else, but I thought it was so good I wanted to put it into print. It was a former pastor from Kentucky, and his message of God indwelling us and living through us, I thought was so powerful that I just wanted to put it into print form, and so I did and self-published it. But I never really thought about writing fiction. But I took this creative writing class, and then I took a class on creativity. And during that whole time, I had this idea of taking some of these things that I was interested in putting into book form and putting them, instead of in nonfiction form, into a brief story about a modern day agnostic skeptic in his 30s from Cincinnati who receives a nice a dinner invitation to dine at a nice Italian restaurant with Jesus of Nazareth. And so he goes expecting a prank by some friends, but at least he'll get a nice Italian meal out of it. And so he is seated with this guy who claims to be Jesus. And during the course of their 2 hours together, he figures out this really is Jesus. And so it's kind of one of those, what would you want to talk to Jesus about if you had him to yourself for 2 hours kind of stories. And my goal really was just I planned on self-publishing this book, which I did. And I wanted to have some copies that I could give to friends and family and people I met that would share with them the message of Jesus in a hopefully entertaining and engaging way, and that they would enjoy the read. Well, Random House got a hold of a copy of it, and they contacted me, and they wanted to publish it. And so I said, great. We signed a standard publishing contract. Well, they ended up making a New York Times bestseller out of it and sold 500,000 copies. And so all of a sudden, I had a fiction writing career dumped in my lap. which was kind of funny because I'm not even much of a fiction reader. About 98% of everything I read is nonfiction. And so about the same time, actually, my self-published version of it had fallen into the hands of an independent film producer in Louisville, Kentucky. And he called me and said, I want to make a movie of your book. So we signed a contract, and he made a movie called The Perfect Stranger. And it ended up becoming kind of a small indie hit on DVDs, and it aired on cable and still does tons of times. So millions of people ended up seeing it, and I ended up writing 2 sequels. He ended up making 2 more movies. And so this thing that I had imagined printing a few self-published copies and having it in my garage to give to friends and family, all of a sudden had ballooned into this 3-book series and 3 movie series that got into the hands or on the TVs of millions of people. And so needless to say, God did something with all of that I never anticipated and never really even had the vision for.
It's amazing how a lot of times things can take on a life of its own. For example, you had one starting point of just being in the trenches of just write these ideas out. And then time passes by and you get all these other amazing opportunities down the road. You're also known to not be shy, to kind of just go after it. And for you to tap into nonfiction world, I can imagine that you probably attracted even different readers, if you will, especially from a faith-based standpoint. What was that like for you getting feedback from people who traditionally won't connect nonfiction with Christian values?
Yeah, my motivation in putting material into story form and actually writing novels, or in this case novellas, short novels, was simply realizing that I could put some of the same material in a 250 or 300 page theology book, but who's going to pick it up and read it? I mean, a few people will, but by and large, that's not what people do. And people like good stories, however. And so if a friend gives them a 100-page story and says, hey, I think you'll really enjoy reading this, they're much more inclined to read that. Number one, because it's short and easy to read. And number two, because, somebody recommended it to them. And so you're right. I just figure, hey, here's a way to reach an audience that I otherwise could never reach if I was, just writing nonfiction material and just simple prose, and with the combination of that, and obviously the movies were made, then tons of people were reached that never would have been exposed to what God had laid on my heart. So yeah, it's that really is always my motivation for writing fiction, is to not only to entertain people, but also to put forth a message that will hopefully be challenging and life-changing.
Once again, listen to Refocused Radio and talking to our guest today, David Gregory. Whether you're watching us online or listening on the airwaves, want to get to this next question. When you think about today's culture, you study theology, you've written fiction, you've been able to have your work be displayed in movies. So when you think about the state of the modern church, what do you think is missing today, and how can we do a better job having a fruitful discussion?
Well, it's interesting what's happening today, because there seems to be an awareness of a move toward back toward the spiritual, especially among the younger generation. People are wanting meaning and connection with God and connection with one another in that process. And so I've read that there are many young people that are moving toward various church denominations or independent churches, and just really seeking. And I think there's a renewed hunger out there. I think especially over the last 10 or 15 years, in part because our technology has made us such a more isolated society, and people don't have the connections they used to. People don't have the sense of meaning that they used to, because so many of our institutions are just don't have the strength that they used to, whether it be the family or, education or, you name it. And so people are looking for something to provide them with roots that they can really dig down deep and say, hey, this is what life's all about, and this is what I want to invest my life in, something that's bigger than just me and my own pleasure. And so my heart really is to tap into that and to say, yeah, there really is something more significant, and God really does have a meaning for your life beyond just yourself. And so I think that increasingly that's a message that resonates with people. And actually, my latest book, I came out with a novel last year called One of Us. And it really taps directly into that, because I had this idea for a book for about 10 years, and I finally got around to writing it. My vision was simply to take the four Gospels from the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and essentially take that story as it is and replant it into 21st century America, and simply ask the question, what would it look like for Jesus to come to America now for the first time instead of to first century Israel? And so really I wanted to show a very biblical representation of the life and the teachings of Jesus, but what would it look like for him to be talking to people today, to computer programmers and truck drivers and whatever, as opposed to shepherds and fishermen in the first century. And so I'm real pleased with the way it turned out. I think it accomplishes, the feedback I've gotten is it accomplishes what I wanted to accomplish, which was to give people kind of an outside the box look at the person and the life of Jesus, but to do so in a way that was really faithful to the Bible. And so it was something that was fun to write, and hopefully will be an encouragement to people's faith, and if they're searching, to people's search.
I think encourage is a good word, because a lot of times we can go through life and we're human. We get tired. Life hits us. It doesn't ask permission. It just kind of comes out of nowhere, and boom, here you go. But what we do after that matters. How we respond, that truly matters. So when you look at your own personal faith, and you're doing a great job with your work.
At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized, so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
Spreading the light of people to be encouraged. What do you say to that person who feels like, man, they're just on the edge? They feel like everywhere they turn is always another storm, and they just got one out of one yesterday. What do you say to them where they feel like, man, I'm just going through the thick of things?
Well, I would say to them, most importantly, it's okay to fail. It's okay to be discouraged. It's okay to be knocked down. I know in my own writing career, my writing career was kind of flipped from people's usual writing career. Usually people have to work for years to finally get a break and to have something happen. I pretty much success was just dumped in my lap. And now I was 40 years old, but I had just started writing and self-publishing books. And all of a sudden, I wrote something that became a New York Times bestseller and sold all these copies, and movies were being made. And so all of that came as quite a shock because I never imagined any of that happening. And so Random House wanted me to write a bunch more books, not surprisingly. And so I did. But my sales kind of with each book progressively dropped. And so my contract with Random House ran out. Dinner with a Perfect Stranger was published in 2005. That was my first mega hit. And then my last book with Random House, called The Last Christian, was published in 2010. And then I had one more published by a traditional publisher in 2012 and one more in 2016. And since then, publishers just haven't been interested. My sales haven't been good enough. And I think maybe more than anything, the publishing industry has changed so much because authors really have to do their own marketing now. And that wasn't the case 20 or 25 years ago. But now you have to have this really good social media presence and already have a lot of potential buyers from your followers. And I just don't have that. I'm not exactly the best social media maven on the planet. And so as a result, publishers just aren't interested. And so the question for me becomes, okay, well, if I'm writing these things, but I don't have any really good way to market them, then is there any point even in writing them? And I've just continued to write, trusting that God has a purpose behind me putting these books out. And actually, it's interesting because last August, completely from out of the blue, just as happened with the movie producer with the Perfect Stranger books, I got an email from a guy who's worked in Hollywood for 20 or 25 years. He said, I read your book, The Last Christian, which, as I said, came out in 2010. So that was a long time ago. He said, I loved it, and I want to pitch it as a streaming series out here. So he wrote a pilot script, and he is currently pitching it as a streaming series. And not only that, my book, One of Us, is now being put, which just came out last year, is now being put in front of people associated with the movie industry. And so I just trust that, God knows what he wants to do with these things. And, I may not be racking up huge numbers of book sales these days, but if one of these two or both of them get into a streaming series platform or a movie, then it's like, well, way more people are going to be exposed to that than would ever read the book anyway. And so I've gotten to a place in life to where I've taken my disappointments and my discouragement and the supposed failure of the last number of years. And God just brought me to a point where I could simply trust, hey, God has me where he wants me. I'm doing what he wants me to do. And the results, ultimately, I'll just leave in his hands and trust him with the process. And he continues to show that he can do with it what he wants to. And so that's a good place to be.
Once again, listen to Refocused Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest, David Gregory. You can go to his website, davidgregorybooks.com. I want to emphasize what you said earlier about recognizing it being bigger than yourself versus we all have pleasures of this world, what we desire, what we think belongs to us. It's always what's in it for me, and that's a very humanistic situation. We always going to think about how am I going to be able to benefit from this. But it was interesting what you're saying about the struggles of marketing and how things are changing in the industry. It's funny how God will pull the plug on man-made systems. And I want you to touch on that because there's a lot of young people out there who they might be frustrated with the job market. They might be frustrated with college. They might be frustrated with just life in general. And a lot of times we are put in a lot of pressure points, but we don't really truly understand because in the moment we could be fighting it and being very emotional about it, which is normal, but it's not normal to stay there.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing from you is that you were able to pivot or adjust with time. And that took a lot of probably surrender to, okay, God, from a logic standpoint, why is it not working? But to your point in your story, he still opened up doors for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I think it's really important for us to have a sense of, here are the things that I'm gifted at, here are the things that I do well, and especially here are the things that I'm passionate about. And I think one of the things that the younger people, I think, today really struggle with is this sense of, okay, I'm not really passionate about anything. And as I've watched my kids grow up, they're still fairly young. They're 19 to 23. And as I've watched them grow up, I've really seen the incredible benefit of to their lives when they've developed a certain passion and something that they can throw themselves into. And that may lead to a career that, provides adequate support for them and what they need financially. And it might not be. I mean, it might not lead to that. But it's still important to have that sense of, here are the things that I'm gifted at doing. And it's always good to explore new things that you might become gifted at doing. And here are the things that I'm passionate about. And if we don't really have something that we're passionate about, then that's a good place to start. It's like, okay, what can I find in life that I think is really important and that I can be passionate about? I read a book years ago called "Do What You Love, the Money Will Follow." And the book was interesting, but I'm not sure I agree with it anymore. I think a better statement would be, do what you love, the impact will follow. If you are passionate about something and you love doing something, then you will end up impacting people positively, and you will just influence them in such positive ways. And whether that becomes a real career for you or just something that is kind of part of you something you do as part of your life. Hey, I love to go out and play Frisbee golf. Is that what they call it these days? I can't remember. I love to go do that. I'm passionate about that. Okay, go. Fine, go. Get involved in a group of people in your area that are passionate about that, and pour yourselves into those people. I mean, we can become connected to people and have an influence on people in all sorts of ways that aren't necessarily immediately apparent to us. And really that's what I began to do with my writing. I never envisioned having a writing career. That really was never on my radar. I just started doing something that I knew I did pretty well and that I was passionate about. And God just took it from there.
It was amazing what you're saying. I shared earlier with you in the green room some recent news, and I can't help to think, out of all the people I have on, including yourself, I still always come to a common thread. And that is the individual who's reached the peak of their career or obtained massive success. The formula has been consistent. They reach a point in their life where they had to make a tough decision. Do I go with what has not been working? Or do I make adjustments to do what's necessary? And I think that's important to emphasize, because until we actually do what is necessary, we will continue to avoid that important part, and that will hinder our life. And we won't be able to actually go to where we were meant to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it means making choices to take out of our lives things that maybe neutral in and of themselves, but they're sapping our resources, they're sapping our time, relationships that maybe aren't all that great, that are sapping our energy. And if we really have something that we want to pursue strongly and feel like we can impact people in a positive way by pursuing that, then sometimes we do have to make some of those tough choices.
Once again, listen on Refocused Radio and watching this online, talking to our guest today, David Gregory. Go to his website, davidgregorybooks.com. You can get a copy of all his books because he has more than one, as you can tell. But before we sign off, man, I know you probably have a lot of things going on in the future. You might have some book signings or events. What's some ways that our audience can keep tabs on you if you have any other news going on in the future?
Yeah, the best way actually is just to go to my website, davidgregorybooks.com. I've got a news section there or upcoming events. And so, yeah, I speak at various locations from time to time. And so those will always be on there. I have podcasts that I do from time to time, like this one. And so, those will be on there when they get posted and so forth. And so, and anybody who wants to connect with me, they can certainly drop me a line through the website, and would love to interact with anybody that's listening.
Like always, I want to say to our guest today, David, like we tell everyone, appreciate your time on the show. And, man, love to have you on again, man.
Super. Would love to as well. It's been great taking the time to chat. I really appreciate you having me on.